Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a masterful game that many have enjoyed since it first came out just a while back. I played through the game's story almost 3 times myself, mostly cause I was missing stuff for 100%. And when I finally did get the coveted platinum trophy for Clair Obscur, I felt both relieved and saddened, knowing that my journey in this game was now coming officially to a close, but I had nothing really left to do. I completed literally everything. Every character hit level 99. I had maxed out pretty much whatever I could in the game. And I realized that in that moment that here I was playing a game that came out in 2025 that for once, I actually felt saddened that the experience was now over for me, because most of the time, once I beat a game, I'm almost just excited for the next game that I jump into. But when it came to Clair Obscur, I felt more like I was going through some sort of withdrawal, like I knew whatever I played next, I wouldn't be able to catch that sort of high again. Thankfully, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon did come out, and that game is about as close to a second coming of that feeling like what Clair Obscur originally gave to me. And both of these games are amazing in their own rights, and both games have that sauce, if you will, that je ne sais quoi, as they would say, that really elevates a piece of art above its contemporaries. And both of these games just make me excited to sit down and jump into their worlds when I have the free time. Yet both of these games are kind of a problem in a way too, and some believe that they're going to change things for the worse, and others think that games like Clair Obscur are only successful due to mega corporate support. Clair Obscur has been a huge sales success, but I'll admit I'm surprised to see Microsoft getting zero credit in helping it achieve that. This article has caused a lot of people to raise their eyebrows because it's, well, kinda tone deaf if I'm being honest. The article references another one from GameIndustry.biz where they recently sat down and interviewed the people who made Clair Obscur, and that one is titled The Big Clair Obscur Expedition 33 Interview, Sandfall and Kepler on Team Size, The Return of AA Games, and What's Next. So, circling back to that first article, apparently Microsoft is not getting enough praise for making Clair a success, which I think is unwarranted, because Game Pass doesn't really seem to help many AAA games when it comes to much of anything besides really cannibalizing their sales. After all, recently, as seen here, Doom the Dark Ages has been confirmed to have only sold around 800,000 copies since launch, so that Game Pass number definitely ate into id Software's full price sales. While Dark Ages is a good game, it didn't set the world on fire at all. It's not to say that every game is ruined sales-wise by Game Pass. We do know that Oblivion Remastered and Clair Obscur, they both released their day one as well. But I think the real reason why Clair did so well was cause not many people had their eyes on it at first. But then it came out to insanely glowing reviews. I mean, we were in like the high 90s when we saw that and scoring perfect 10s across the board. It just hit the ground with a thunderous smash of a perfect storm ratings, and people just took notice of that clearly. Reviews obviously still equate to people buying games, and if a game reviews poorly, it will, even to this day, let's be honest, affect their sales. It just is what it is, and if you become one of the lucky few who manages that 90 plus Metacritic score that they're all chasing, chances are that your game will be bought and played by people who don't even necessarily like the genre but just want to play it because of the score. There are people who are like that. And look, I've played a lot of turn-based RPGs in my time, and I still think that Clair has probably one of the best turn battle systems I've ever seen in my life. It's actually astounding how well crafted its battle system really is, and I genuinely believe that we're gonna be seeing that battle system, which is so evidently an evolution of things like Legend of Dragoon's battle system, to make a roaring comeback. But as TrueAchievement.com says here, they still think that Clair Obscur is wrong to not acknowledge Microsoft at all, as they say here. Still, I have to admit, it feels a little weird to read a celebratory piece like this that doesn't even name check Microsoft and its Xbox Game Pass service as a potential factor in the game's success, particularly when the interview goes out of its way to honestly reflect on the hurdles facing AA development today and how these creatives got around that. They also bring up, as you can see here, how quite a few of the highest rated games of the year so far all launched day one on Game Pass. But I mean, games like Blue Prince also launched day one on PS Plus, but generally speaking, I think releasing day one on these platforms is a double-edged sword. If your game had an obscenely low budget, then releasing this way can obviously help you because Microsoft or Sony just pay you straight up for having it. But it hasn't worked all of the time. Again, Dark Ages pretty much flopped due to Game Pass just eating its sales, that's obvious. But again, Clair Obscur reviewed so well out of the gate that there was tangible excitement and curiosity to see what this game was all about for many people. And while the game is amazing, and yes, you should play it if you haven't already, I'm worried that the industry will instead learn the wrong things from games like Clair or even Tainted Grail. These games are smaller than your AAA offerings, yet they go for the wide as a pool but deep as an ocean philosophy instead of what AAA usually does these days, which is wide as an ocean and deep as a puddle. They just keep adding map icons and rehashing the same content over and over to pad the experience. It's why in most AAA games, if you put a gun to my head and ask me to tell you 5 side quests in each one that I played, I probably can't these days because it's all so forgettable. I think games should be smaller and be more quality based. I mean, Tainted Grail's only real issue is, yes, its game stability and its performance, but outside of that, the actual meat of what that game is amazing, and it's apparently selling well for Awakened Realms, and I truly hope that Tainted Grail does get a sequel in the future, because they've successfully combined Arthurian legend with like dark fantasy and Lovecraftian elements pretty much, and it all came into this weird world that to me feels more exciting than anything Bethesda has done in over a decade and then some. Tainted Grail, to me, it gives me old school Witcher vibes, or even Dragon Age Origins. Like, it's this game that, if successful, a potential sequel could be absolutely insane in terms of potential if given the chance to, happen. And Clair Obscur is the same way, but it's more so that potential actualized already. And I think if anything, these games that are resonating with people the most are these AA games over the AAA ones. They're just, how do I put this? They feel like they have actual heart and soul in them, Like the people who made these games didn't just clock in for the day to make their paycheck, but really actually cared about what they were doing. You know how it feels yourself when you do something you truly enjoy doing versus something that you're obligated to do? We've all felt that feeling. It's that in game form. Like as a kid, I couldn't wait to come home to play Final Fantasy VII, Legend of Dragoon, or Hoshigami Ruining Blue Earth, or hell, Final Fantasy Tactics 2. But when I knew I had to go to sleep and wake up to go to school to learn about stuff I frankly didn't care about, yeah, those 8 hours at school, it felt more like 20 hours instead. And I can only imagine how these AAA devs feel when they know that they gotta make something that they just frankly don't really care about anymore. The burnout is here, trust me. Even me doing YouTube content, trust me when I tell you that most people who make YouTube content, or really any content in general these days, they are probably burnt out to a certain degree, probably all of the time, and it is just what it is. So when you play something that's cool and weird like Clair Obscur or Tainted Grail, it gives you those feelings that you're yearning again. That feeling that you chased when you sat down to play those sorts of games that you loved in the past, because you wanted to see more of it. What could be hiding in that next area or around the next corner, I got that feeling aplenty playing both of those games, because once I beat Act 2 of Clair Obscur and then the game enters its proper endgame, you would think originally, well, what's there left to do? Honestly, just the final mission and that's it? Well, I mean, yeah, but then if you explore, you'll quickly then realize, wow, there's pretty much an entire game's worth of content just waiting outside of your reach once you reach the end game proper. You have that big tower full of hard battles. You got flying godlike beings that you gotta fight now for special picto items. There's entire massive optional areas where you travel through them fighting all kinds of monsters and finding new things. Not to mention a super boss I won't spoil, or all the, weird hidden areas sitting in the clouds that you couldn't access yet. It just made me feel like I was playing Final Fantasy 9 or 4 again. Like it felt like a world that was full of mysteries that I wanted to unravel because I wanted to do that myself. I feel the same way with Tainted Grail too. Yesterday, I did a quest in that game where I found some old guy guarding a pit. He asked me to relieve him of his year's duty, so I said, screw it, why not? I'll join you. He then said, okay, and then he just jumped into the very pit that he was just protecting for years. So me being me, of course, I jumped in after him because why not? And then I fell for multiple seconds until I crashed onto like a massive pile of decaying bodies. And then that old man had actually died from the fall. And now I was in this like pit of darkness. And at the end of it, I found some Lovecraftian evil that the quest doesn't even really explain even when it's over. You just feel like you found something that you weren't really meant to find, but that sense of discovery and dread is amazing. And the cave that this guy was in, it wasn't even marked with the quest, it's just some cave. It's the same way in Clair Obscur, you just find places and then things just start happening. I don't feel like I'm being handheld the same way by these AA games, and honestly, I love it. It also helps that these games aren't as huge as an Ubisoft slop title, so that sense of discovery is also more tangible and digestible, because it's not 50 million kilometers long with nothing but empty, vapid, open space to traverse through like Ghost Recon Wildlands or something. And then former PlayStation executive Shuhei Yoshida, that's this merry old guy on screen here that you're seeing, he left Sony after like 30-something years with the company, and he now works as a freelance consultant and is currently working with Kepler Interactive, which is the publisher of Clair Obscur. He was also interviewed as a part of that GameIndustry.biz interview. Here's what Shuhei Yoshida said about Kepler Interactive and how Clair Obscur will shape the industry going forward. They have a great balance in looking for innovation in games and investing in commercially viable projects. I think the way Kepler chooses games and supports developers is a great example of sustainable indie publishing. I expect many companies in the industry will look for inspiration from what Kepler is doing. What's different about Kepler over, say, Electronic Arts or Microsoft is that Kepler is actually owned by multiple studios, and they all kind of just coexist and make decisions together on what looks cool and what they should pursue in games media. Their director of portfolios who oversees the games for Kepler Interactive is a guy named Matthew Handrahan. Hopefully I said that right, but he's a former games journalist who decided to enter games fully. And here's what he said about Kepler Interactive and how they make successes like Clair Obscur a reality. They make a lot of their own choices creatively and commercially in terms of the direction of their business, but there is a collaborative aspect that they can draw upon if they feel they need it. The thing that we definitely are very clear on is Kepler is not sitting here telling anyone what to do, which is a stark difference, mind you, to what most game publishers do these days. They usually dictate and decide exactly what they want and even strong-arm studios into compliance. It's way worse with AAA too, and I think we can all agree that AAA is definitely suffering because of the bloat as well as the interferences that they face daily. According to the people at the top of Kepler, they look for games with bold art directions and unique gameplay features. They also specifically avoid what they call industry trends and make an effort to not push games that do concepts like, say, superhero genre slop or have familiar influences with other IP like Star Wars, which is smart because both Star Wars and superhero films are kind of falling off as of late anyways for the most part, unless your name is Spider-Man, I guess. But Kepler makes it evident in their interview that they are not in the business of just trying to replicate what others are already doing. An example they give at one point is they would not take imitation games of, say, a recent success of a game, because if they did that, by the time their imitation game was ready for market, there would likely already be like 100 other similar games that are also ripping off that one success game, meaning you would both be wasting your time and resources pushing something that can't stand out because of the other copycats. And believe me, as someone who does YouTube, I understand that, because the amount of times that I've seen my style of, say, thumbnail or even other things that I do get ripped off is kind of annoying. There's like entire other channels on YouTube that just straight up copied how I did things verbatim. I won't even mention them by name because I won't give them clout, but yeah, it's annoying to say the least, and I know I'm not the only one, but I guess it just shows how people will copy anything that they think is successful. Then Sandfall, which is a studio that made Clair Obscur, their COO and producer, whose name is, and I'm gonna butcher this, but his name is Francois Maurice. I said that for wrong, I'm probably sure, but he spoke about how Clair Obscur came to be and how what they did was not something welcomed in AAA at the time at all. Francois would say he was immediately on board with Broch's passion for revitalizing the kind of flashy 3D turn-based JRPGs that had long gone out of fashion. That passion came first, the strategy came later. A bit after, when we tried to rationalize that yearning he has for this kind of game, we realized that it wasn't addressed as much in the market and maybe there was a place for it, says Francois. So they deliberately went out of their way to take a genre that the AAA industry is pretty much left behind, which is turn-based RPGs, and decided to make a game of that variety because AAA saw no potential in it, which is interesting, isn't it? Because now Clair Obscur, just like Baldur's Gate 3, are games that are widely celebrated, yet their genres are definitely something that people usually aren't into on such a level, yet here we are anyways. I mean, even Square Enix, which was one of the pioneers of turn-based games, left it behind with Final Fantasy, their flagship series these days too. And maybe if Square Enix made the next Final Fantasy have combat like Clair Obscur, but in their own unique way, that could be a mega hit for them. Because what has happened with Final Fantasy especially is that Square Enix has obviously chased trends. I mean, the guy who did the combat for Devil May Cry 5, he worked on Final Fantasy 16 after all, but I don't think turn-based is going out of style. It just needs to be reiterated and innovated like anything else, because in my opinion, the way that Clair Obscur plays, it feels just as impactful and involving as, say, Dark Souls or even Final Fantasy 16. And just because your game is turn-based doesn't mean it has to suck or be boring, and Sandfall proved that with Expedition 33 for sure. They also even recently announced that they sold 3.3 million copies of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 in 33 days, and that's no joke, by the way. And games like these should become more normalized, because this is what the industry should be, or what it used to be, I should say. Games made for art and passion, not hitting sales targets or pushing the latest cross-media collabs so people can open their wallets again. Thankfully, Sandfall, according to GameSpot as seen here, they already have their next game idea planned, which is great to see. Again, Francois Maurice was quoted for what Sandfall will do next, and he said this: "Plus, the team has grown up, has acquired new skills throughout production. Many of them were junior when we started. We learned to work together, so I can't wait to get the next project because we'll start from a more efficient position than when we started the company 5 years ago. And that comes with higher expectations as well, so it'll be challenging, but I can say that we have," and Guillaume Broche, Sandfall CEO and creative director in particular, has great ideas for the next game. I definitely butchered that name too, but anyway, that's great to hear. I hope their next game is also amazing, but I also hope it too is another turn-based RPG, although I wouldn't rule out action RPG either, because if they could revolutionize turn-based the way that they did already, I wonder what they would do with action RPG as a blueprint instead. But everything that Clair Obscur is should be seen as a victory, but it is also a threat to AAA too, because Clair Obscur has outdone so many of their competition despite being cheaper to both make or buy. It sold more than AC Shadows, it beat Doom the Dark Ages, it's still clearly selling at a rapid pace and then some. And I am worried that a game like this will only lead the industry to learn the worst lessons from it instead of what's actually needed. GameIndustry.biz then said this during the interview along with Francois, and commenting, "The success of Clair Obscur has led many to herald the comeback of AA games, a sector that has shrunk significantly over the past couple of console generations. Even if it's a harder category to define in 2025 based on a lack of publicly available budget numbers. Some people predicted to us that it was a tricky sector when we started development, and there could be kind of a curse on AA games," Francois would continue. "But from our perspective, we didn't care too much about market considerations. In a sense, a Plague Tale or Mortal Shell or Hellblade, games like those, were already proof for us that small teams of less than 50 people could have great games and great execution. We desperately need more games like Clair Obscur and Tainted Grail, games not made by 1,000 people while also outsourcing to multiple studios the world over just so that they can make the next live service slop game, in my opinion. And it's ironic too, that the games that cost less and are made by fewer people are usually the ones that also win all the time, the big awards come season 2. It's almost as if having too many cooks in the kitchen like AAA usually does never really works out." As the head of portfolio at Sandfall would then say, "These kinds of games did exist in much greater numbers about 15 years ago, and I think there are some threads that the AAA industry lost as they grew and grew and grew." Well, that's an understatement. I mean, AAA has lost its way for a while now, if you ask me. They chased all kinds of trends, hero shooters, live service stupidity, even DEI to name a few. Hell, even recently a Concord dev gave away their launch plaque to Goodwill after that game flopped hard and died. I mean, you can see it on screen here as I'm talking, and you know how bleak the AAA industry is when the game you spent 6 years making dies, and you gotta sell the plaque with the disc now? That's dark, man. And when you think about how many games could have been made for the cost of a single Concord, it's actually insane. Okay, we don't have exact numbers for Clair Obscur or even Tainted Grail's budgets, however, they do drop this hint which reads, "I would say that I've seen a lot of budget estimations that are all higher than the real budget. Everybody's desperate to know what the budget is for Clair Obscur, and I won't tell them, but I would guarantee that if you got 10 people to guess, I think all 10 wouldn't guess the actual figure. I'm sure Mirror's Edge and Vanquish cost more, put it that way." So naturally, once this was just said, I had to go look up what those costed. So Mirror's Edge apparently costed somewhere between $18 to $28 million. I couldn't find anything for Vanquish, but if Sandfall is telling the truth here, that means that Clair Obscur costed less than at least $30 million to make. To put that into perspective for you, Concord had a budget of roughly $400 million or so, and no, I'm not kidding. Call of Duty Black Ops 6's budget was somewhere around $700 million, so as you can see, the budgets between here are insane. So since we don't have exact numbers, let's just assume that Clair Obscur costed maybe $25 million to put it between Mirror's Edge's budgets that are shown. So if we take that and then use Concord's inflated budget, it means that Sony could have made 16 full games the size of Clair Obscur for the price of a single Concord. Let that sink in for a second there, guys. 16 whole games for the price of Concord. My God. You ask me, it's no wonder why publishers are now looking at the AA space more, because especially when it comes to consoles like the PS5, there just isn't as many exclusives, coming out these days for that console and then some compared to previous generations. Maybe the answer to this ballooning budget nightmare that is killing AAA and shutting down studios and leading to mass layoffs is that places like Sony, Microsoft, and more need to actually rely further on these more creative AA offerings to plug the gaps in their release schedules. I would love a 30-hour AA game from Sony that costs $40 or $50 maximum for PS5. I mean, look at Astrobot. That's pretty much what we want. Maybe a new Sly Cooper made in that bracket, or hell, a new Killzone even. Why does every game need to be hundreds of millions of dollars to make and take years? Make cheaper games for less money so that you have more variety coming out again. Bring back those PS3 eras of releases. If Clair Obscur has proven anything, and Tainted Grail too, is that this approach to gaming is the surefire way to ensure that you can survive in today's industry. Buy or make. Give us games that don't take 5 or more years to make and need to generate $1 billion or the entire just studio dies. Remove all your stupid politics, make a great fun game, and ensure that it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to buy. You can go buy both Clair Obscur and Tainted Grail for less than the deluxe edition of the next Call of Duty that's going to come out. And you'll be getting more quality games and better experiences in my opinion by doing that also. The industry just doesn't need to be this way. These games may be a threat or a problem or whatever to these big industry types, but if they've taught us anything, it's that AA and smaller budgets are the way to go now. I love that Clair Obscur, Tainted Grail, and games like this just exist and are thriving now, because I miss this style and size of games. And the last topic that I want to bring up before I go is how subscription services are actually harming games and not actually helping them. Despite what that first article I talked about saying that Microsoft is why Clair Obscur succeeded, which isn't true, but anyways, this comes from Games Radar. Former PlayStation boss says subscription services like Xbox Game Pass could become dangerous for devs and that Sony delivers a healthier model with PS Plus. And before I hear someone say, oh, he's biased towards PlayStation, maybe yes, but what he's actually saying is that big AAA releases cannot thrive or exist forever by always releasing them day one on Game Pass, while on PS Plus, Sony does not release their big AAA games day one there because it's not viable money-wise to do so. Shuhei Yoshida, who's, who they referenced here, continues with this. If the only way for people to play games is through subscriptions, that's really dangerous because what type of games can be created will be dictated by the owner of the subscription services. Exactly this. It's why, since Game Pass, most of Xbox's first-party titles have worsened, and that's true because there's no incentive to make genuinely amazing games when there's no financial incentive or anything else to do so. The risk is also gone, therefore so is the passion. Shuhei would continue, must always be fresh new ideas tried by small developers that create the next wave of development. But if the big companies dictate what games can be created, I don't think that will advance the industry. This is imperative to Clair Obscur or even Tainted Grail, because that's what these games can and must keep doing. Make a new way for development, not tied to the structure of what these subscription services are obviously demanding. And a reminder before I go, Clair Obscur was not made for Game Pass first. It was made by a studio that knew that if it failed, it would close up shop and be doomed to AAA development hell for the rest of eternity. And that tangible fear of failure led to the explosion of creativity that we can all see with Expedition 33. Had the game been made day one for Game Pass only, the game would be nowhere near as good because there would be no reason to be there because there's no incentive to do so. Game Pass first and designed for that service day one is what is killing these games too and not helping them. And the sooner people realize further investing in claiming that Game Pass or even PS Plus is the future, you're just going to stifle and ruin the quality of games because you want slop for subscription prices instead. Look, Clair Obscur is a wake-up call for the industry, Tainted Grail is a much-needed jab to Western RPGs, and we need more games like these and not less. I hope people play them, especially after watching this video, because hopefully and personally, these two games are my favorite games of 2025 so far, and it's not even close. I do hope more people enjoy them, and I hope videos like this make people try something besides the next football football game or Call of Duty slop every year like they usually always play. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.